right now, like 56 feet below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, there is this, well, there's a gaping open hole in the floor of a tiny metal cylinder.
Yeah, it's just an open hole right to the ocean.
Right. And the only thing stopping the crushing weight of that water from rushing in and, drowning the four humans living inside is just this invisible wall of pressurized air.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's really happening.
It totally does. And these four people, they aren't just visiting for an hour. They've literally packed their bags, moved in, and are calling the ocean floor their home.
Which is just a massive shift in how we do things down there.
Exactly. So for you listening today, we have a really singular, incredible focus for this deep dive. We are unpacking a transcript from a recent CNET YouTube video.
Right, the one titled Living Underwater in 2026. New underwater habitat just dropped.
That's the one. We're looking at Vanguard, which is this groundbreaking underwater habitat installed off the coast of Florida.
Yeah, by a company called Deep.
Right. But we aren't just going to, tour the physical nuts and bolts of the structure. I mean, we'll do that, but we're really going to dig deeply into the intense biological science that forces the human body to adapt to this.
Because the biology is where the real magic happens.
Oh, for sure. We'll get into the revolutionary impact this has on marine biology and the surprisingly direct connection between surviving the ocean floor and surviving the journey to the moon.
Yeah, the space connection is wild.
It really is. Okay, so let's unpack this. The source material here is documenting a leap that is just, it's almost incomprehensible.
It really is a massive technological leap. Primarily because it represents a complete reimagining of how humans interact with, one of the most consistently hostile environments on the planet.
Right. The ocean is not friendly.
No.
Not at all.
So we are looking at a fundamental shift in our relationship with the deep ocean here.
So to ground this for you listening,
right,
we need to establish exactly what and where this thing is. So Vanguard is installed at Tennessee Reef, which is a marine sanctuary off the Florida coast. And the CNET transcript describes it using this phrase I absolutely love. They call it a reverse aquarium.
I love that phrase too. The reverse aquarium concept requires a really powerful psychological shift.
How so?
Well, normally when humanity decides to study or observe marine life, we dictate the terms, right?
Right. We catch them and put them in a tank.
Exactly. We extract them from their world. We bring them all the way up through the water column, and we place them in these glass tanks on the surface.
Where we control everything.
Exactly. We control the water temperature. We filter the salinity. We manage the lighting schedules. We are entirely the masters of that domain.
But Vanguard completely flips that.
It flips the entire dynamic on its head. Down there at Tennessee Reef, the humans are the exhibited species.
We're the ones in the tank.
Right. They are locked in this tiny, artificially maintained bubble, while the marine ecosystem, the sharks, the rays, the coral polyps, they just roam freely and are entirely unbothered around them.
Wow.
Yeah, you are stepping into a highly evolved alien world, and you're doing it entirely on the ocean's terms.
And stepping into that world is a team of 4. They call them aquanauts.
Patonauts.
Which is such a cool title. And they're designed to stay down there for up to 5 days or potentially, much longer in the future.
Right, 5 days is just the start.
But reading through this transcript, one piece of context completely halted me. It stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, the timeline.
Yes. This habitat, built by Deep, is the first open ocean undersea habitat built, tested, and deployed in America in almost 4 decades.
Yeah, 40 years. It's a huge gap.
4 decades. The last time we seriously did this, we were listening to cassette tapes. What happened? Why do we just completely abandon the ocean floor for 40 years?
Well, the abandonment wasn't due to, a lack of scientific interest. It was driven by this really brutal combination of immense engineering hurdles and just astronomical financial costs.
It just got too expensive.
Exactly. It became unsustainable. Back in the 1960s and 70s, there was actually a massive boom in this technology.
Oh, really? Like who?
Well, you had Jacques Cousteau's Conshelf projects and the U.S. Navy's Sea Lab program. We genuinely thought we were going to build underwater cities.
Like the Jetsons, but underwater.
Exactly. But the ocean is relentlessly, aggressively destructive.
Right. Salt water ruins everything.
It really does. Salt water is a highly corrosive electrolyte. So when you put a steel structure down there, you are instantly fighting chloride ions, just eating away at the metal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you introduce galvanic corrosion, where different metals in the structure basically act like a giant dissolving battery when they're exposed to seawater.
That sounds like a maintenance nightmare.
A total nightmare. So maintaining structural integrity, delivering consistent power from the surface, managing life support in an environment actively trying to crush you, it just became too expensive.
So the money just dried up.
By the 1980s, yeah. Because it was infinitely cheaper and vastly safer to just send down remotely operated vehicles.
Right. ROVs.
Or to just have divers do really short excursions. So Vanguard's deployment by deep, it really signals a return to this bold era of human ambition that we haven't seen since, like, the Apollo era.
I mean, I understand the historical weight of it, but I kind of have to challenge the premise here.
Okay, challenge away.
A 5-day stay, it just doesn't sound like this earth-shattering milestone. I mean, 5 days isn't a massive marathon when military submarines stay submerged for months at a time, right?
That's a fair point, but it's a completely different mechanism.
Why is Vanguard treated as this profound biological achievement compared to, like, a nuclear sub?
Okay, the distinction lies entirely in how the structure handles pressure.
Okay, explain that.
So a military submarine is a closed pressure vessel. When it dives to, say, 500 or 1,000 feet, the massive, incredibly thick steel hull absorbs all of that external crushing force.
So the people inside don't feel it?
Exactly. Inside the sub, the air pressure is maintained at exactly 1 atmosphere.
Which is what we're feeling right now on land.
Right. The exact same air pressure you and I are experiencing on the surface. The sailors inside never physically interact with the water pressure outside.
Oh, okay. I get it.
If a sailor wanted to, like, open a hatch and swim outside a nuclear sub at depth, they couldn't. The pressure differential would instantly kill them.
Right. It would be violent.
Extremely. But Vanguard is entirely different. It is an open ocean habitat operating at ambient pressure.
Ambient pressure, meaning it's not sealed off from the ocean.
Exactly. To keep the water from flooding in, the air inside Vanguard is compressed until it perfectly matches the crushing water pressure of the ocean outside.
Wow. So the air pushes back.
Yes. This means the aquanauts inside are literally breathing compressed air, and their bodies are absorbing all of that pressure.
So they were living in the pressure.
Exactly. They are part of that pressurized environment.
That distinction fundamentally changes the reality of the space, which brings us to the architecture of this thing.
The architecture is fascinating.
We need to visually construct this for the listener so you can really feel the physical realities of living down there.
Right. Put yourself in the room.
The transcript tells us Vanguard sits 56 feet below the surface. And looking into the diving side of this, that number is highly specific.
It's very intentional.
Right, because 60 feet is the generally accepted upper limit for standard PADI-certified open water scuba divers. PADI being, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors.
The main group that certifies recreational divers, yeah.
Right, so if you take a basic weekend scuba course, 60 feet is your ceiling.
Yeah, the choice of 56 feet is this calculated strategic sweet spot for deep.
Why that specific spot, though?
Well, at that depth, the ambient pressure is nearly 3 times what it is on the surface.
3 times, okay.
Yeah, which is deep enough to require uncompromising heavy-duty engineering. I mean, the life support systems, the carbon dioxide scrubbers, the structural integrity, they all have to be world-class.
Right, you can't cheap out on parts at 3 atmospheres.
Exactly. However, by staying just under that 60-foot limit, Vanguard remains accessible to a massively broader pool of researchers.
Oh, because they don't need insane training.
Exactly. You don't need to be an ultra-elite, saturation-certified commercial deep-sea diver with, like, thousands of hours of specialized training just to commute down to the habitat.
Right. A normal marine biologist can actually get there.
Right. A marine biologist with a standard open water certification and maybe just some supplemental training can theoretically make the journey down to the front door.
It democratizes access to the scientists who actually need to do the biological observation.
It opens it up to the people who need to be there.
So let's virtually walk through the actual space then, because the source breaks Vanguard down into 5 main components.
Right, the 5 sections.
Let's ignore the list format and just imagine a day in the life. So you arrive at the habitat by swimming down from the surface, and you enter through the dive center.
The staging area.
Yeah, the operational staging area. And it features something called a moon pool, which is where divers enter and exit the water.
The moon pool is brilliant.
To a layperson, an open hole in the floor of an underwater base sounds like an engineering flaw just waiting to become a disaster.
It sounds terrifying if you don't know the physics.
Exactly. But the physics of it are incredibly elegant. The best way to visualize a moon pool is imagine you take an empty glass from your kitchen, you turn it completely upside down, and you push it straight down into a bucket of water.
A perfect analogy.
The air trapped inside the glass has nowhere to go. It compresses slightly, but it prevents the water from rushing up and filling the glass. The water line just sits there, hovering at the bottom rim.
Yeah, that cup analogy illustrates ambient pressure perfectly. Vanguard is the upside-down glass.
Right.
Because the air inside the habitat is mechanically pressurized by these compressors to exactly match the water pressure at 56 feet. The ocean simply meets the air at the opening of the moon pool, and it just stops.
It just sits there.
It sits there perfectly flat. It basically looks like a small, glowing blue indoor pond right in the floor of the room.
That is so wild a picture.
And there are no heavy airlocks to cycle through,
Mm-hmm.
no massive steel doors to unbolt. When an aquanaut wants to go to work, they literally just put on their fins, sit on the edge of the floor, and slide directly down into the Atlantic Ocean.
Because the internal air pressure is literally pushing the ocean out of the room.
Exactly. But, and this is a big, but maintaining that perfect equilibrium is a highly dynamic, active process.
It's not just set it and forget it.
Not at all. The life support system has to constantly monitor internal pressure. Like it has to add compressed air if the temperature drops, or vent it if the pressure spikes.
Oh, because if it gets off balance.
If it gets off balance, that indoor pond could suddenly rise up and flood the floorboards.
Wow. Okay, so once you are inside, safely past the moon pool, you strip off your dive gear, and you walk into the main living chamber.
The living quarters.
Right. And you're looking at 4 bunk-style beds, some highly compact countertops for meal prep, and a small table for eating that has a window looking out at the ocean.
The viewport.
Yeah. Just pause and imagine that morning routine for a second. You wake up in your bunk, you pour your coffee, and you sit at a table looking through a thick acrylic viewport at a 56-foot deep, thriving coral reef.
The psychological necessity of that viewport really cannot be overstated.
I imagine without it, it would be a nightmare.
It would be. When engineering for isolated, confined, extreme environments, they call them ICE environments, if you put 4 people in a sealed metal tube with no visual access to the outside world, you essentially create a sensory deprivation chamber.
Right, you lose your mind.
Circadian rhythms break down, claustrophobia spikes, and crew morale just plummets rapidly.
So the window keeps you sane.
Exactly. Even though the ambient light at 56 feet is heavily filtered-like, mostly just the blue spectrum penetrates that deep, washing out the reds and yellows. Being able to look out and see a dynamic, living reef provides vital psychological tethering.
You can see the outside world moving.
Right. You see schools of fish pass by, you see the subtle shifts in light from day to night. It reminds the primitive parts of the human brain that there is a wider world outside the immediate confines of those metal walls.
But I gotta say, that sensory deprivation tank vibe might creep in really quickly when we move to the next component.
Ah, yes. The bathroom.
The bathroom. The source specifically notes that the bathroom doubles as a workspace when needed.
It does.
And it requires, quote, intense coordination with your colleagues.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Right. Think about the friction of sharing a single bathroom in a normal, spacious surface apartment. Now imagine that bathroom is also your office, your wet lab, your data entry terminal, and you cannot leave the house for 5 straight days.
It's a lot.
It's like trying to run a tech startup out of a commercial airplane lavatory. I mean, the passive-aggressive friction seems inevitable.
Oh, it's guaranteed. But when marine architects design these habitats, every single cubic inch of pressurized volume represents astronomical financial and engineering costs.
So they can't waste space on a separate office.
Exactly. Wasted space simply does not exist. Consequently, the multi-purpose nature of that bathroom workspace forces a level of intimate, constant spatial choreography that most people will never, ever experience.
Right, you have to plan your whole day around it.
It completely eliminates the concept of true privacy. Every biological function, every scientific analysis, every moment of rest has to be communicated and negotiated with 3 other people.
Over a 5-day mission, that sounds exhausting.
The psychological friction you mentioned is guaranteed. It demands a crew selected not just for their scientific acumen, but for exceptional emotional intelligence and conflict resolution skills.
Because you can't just storm out if you're mad.
Right. You cannot just storm out and take a walk around the block to cool off if someone is monopolizing the workstation/toilet. You are trapped in that social dynamic.
Man. Okay, so the final 2 components of the physical architecture round out the structural integrity. The fourth is the massive foundation, which secures the habitat to the ocean floor.
Because it isn't just resting there.
Right. It has to be anchored against massive shear forces from deep ocean currents and, potential storm surges from above.
It has to stay put.
And the fifth is the topside buoy, which floats on the surface of the ocean directly above Vanguard. It serves as a visual marker for surface vessels, houses communication relays, and acts as a mooring point.
So that's the physical footprint.
Exactly. So we have our mental map. A highly efficient pressurized cylinder of human survival tethered to the reef with a glowing hole in the floor holding the ocean back.
Beautifully engineered.
But all this physical hardware is entirely useless without a massive biological workaround for the people inside.
Oh, absolutely. The hardware is merely the shell. The true innovation lies in the biological software adjustment that allows the human body to endure an environment it fundamentally was not evolved to survive.
This brings us to the biology of the deep and a very specific physiological state called saturation.
Saturation is key.
So the people living in Vanguard, the aquanauts, the video transcript explains that they live in a state of saturation, meaning their body tissue and blood become completely saturated with the inert gas they are breathing.
Right.
And because of this, they can do incredibly long dives outside the habitat lasting 6, 7, or even 8 hours at a time, and they're breathing off continuous gas supplies called umbilicals.
So the term saturation refers to a strict principle of physics known as Henry's law.
Okay, science class time.
Henry's law basically states that the amount of dissolved gas in a liquid is proportional to its partial pressure above the liquid.
So more pressure equals more gas dissolved.
Exactly. When you are on the surface, breathing normal air, your body absorbs a certain amount of nitrogen and oxygen into your bloodstream. But when you descend 56 feet underwater, the ambient pressure triples.
Okay.
That massive increase in pressure forces the gases you are breathing to dissolve into your bloodstream and your body tissues at a highly accelerated rate.
It's like forcing carbon dioxide into soda, right?
That is the exact mechanical process a beverage company uses to create a carbonated soda. They pressurize the gas, and the liquid absorbs it.
And down in Vanguard.
Down in Vanguard, the aquanaut's body is the liquid, and the pressurized habitat air is the gas.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to ask the question that is immediately springing to mind for anyone listening.
Go for it.
If my blood and my tissues are literally saturated, entirely full of compressed gas like a factory-sealed soda bottle, how does that actually feel?
That's a great question.
Like, do you feel swollen? Are you essentially walking around as a human soda can just waiting to pop?
Physically, while you are down there at depth, you do not feel swollen or pressurized at all.
Really? None at all?
None. That is the beauty of perfect equilibrium. Because your entire physical form, the external water pressure pushing inward and the dissolved gas in your tissues pushing outward, is at the exact same pressure. There's no tension.
Oh, they cancel each other out.
Right. Your cell membranes aren't stretching.
Yeah.
You feel entirely normal in terms of physical mass.
But do you notice anything different?
Oh, you would notice secondary effects, for sure.
Yeah.
Because you're breathing gas that is 3 times denser than surface air, the velocity of sound traveling across your vocal cords actually changes.
Oh, like the Donald Duck voice.
Exactly. It makes your voice sound slightly distorted or higher pitched.
That's crazy.
And additionally, denser gas conducts heat away from your body much faster.
So you get cold.
Very quickly, meaning the habitat has to be kept uncomfortably warm by surface standards just to keep the aquanauts from shivering. But in terms of pressure, you feel fine.
So how long does it take to become fully saturated?
Over the course of about 24 hours, the human body absorbs all the gas it possibly can at that specific depth.
And then it just stops.
Right. The fat tissues, the muscle tissues, the bone marrow, they all hit a physiological wall where they simply cannot hold a single molecule more of inert gas.
Wow.
That absolute limit is full saturation.
And the practical payoff of achieving that full saturation is the ability to dive for an entire workday. The transcript mentions they use umbilicals for these dives.
Yeah, the umbilical tethers.
Instead of strapping a heavy metal scuba tank to their back, they wear a specialized helmet connected to a long, durable hose, the umbilical, that tethers directly back to Vanguard's life support systems.
It acts as a lifeline.
Right. The habitat continuously pumps breathable gas directly to them. It basically trades the time limit of a scuba tank for a spatial limit. You have unlimited air, but you can only swim as far as your leash allows.
Is a profound logistical trade-off because standard scuba diving offers total freedom of movement, right? You get 3-dimensional flight through the ocean.
But you're on a ticking clock.
Exactly. You are fiercely bound by the finite volume of air compressed into your tank. An umbilical removes the ticking clock of the air supply, but it forces a spatial boundary.
You can't go explore the next reef over.
No, you can't. It also requires immense psychological trust in the habitat's engineering. I mean, your entire ability to draw breath is dependent on compressors and scrubbers 50 feet behind you that you cannot even see.
That is terrifying.
It is. But for a marine biologist, trading spatial freedom for a solid 8 hours of uninterrupted observation time at a single highly active reef site, that is a scientific dream.
Which begs the massive question for you listening. Why go through all this trouble? Why build a multi-million-dollar habitat, endure the cramped conditions of a bathroom office, and force your blood to saturate with compressed gas just to get an 8-hour dive?
Right. What's the alternative?
Exactly. To understand why Vanguard is revolutionary, we have to look at what happens to the human body if we try to do this from the surface.
The traditional way.
The CNET video makes a comparison that immediately clicks for me. It compares deep-sea diving to Christopher Nolan's movie Interstellar.
The interstellar analogy captures the dread of time perfectly.
It really does, because
Right.
in that film, characters visit a high-gravity water planet where the extreme physics mean every minute they spend on the surface costs them years back home.
Right. The time dilation.
Exactly. And the source explains that without habitats like Vanguard, your time at depth is limited not just by how much air is in your scuba tank, but by the incredibly dangerous, time-consuming process of safely decompressing on the way back up.
Which is very much like that time debt.
Right. It explicitly says in the transcript, the longer and deeper you dive beyond a certain point, the more time you have to spend equalizing to normal pressure.
Yeah.
So even relatively short dives at extreme depths require hours of safety stocks where you are just hanging in the open water on the way back to the boat.
Let's actually break down the terrifying math of decompression sickness to see why standard diving is so wildly inefficient.
Walk me through it.
So we established that under pressure, your tissues absorb gas like a carbonated soda, right?
Right.
Well, if you shake a soda can and rip the tab open instantly, what happens?
It explodes everywhere.
Right, because the sudden drop in pressure causes all that dissolved carbon dioxide to violently come out of solution, forming massive bubbles.
Okay, I see where this is going.
If a diver swimming at 56 feet comes up to the surface too quickly, the exact same physics apply to their bloodstream. The ambient pressure drops, and the dissolved nitrogen in their tissues aggressively forms physical gas bubbles.
In their blood.
In their blood, in their tissues. These bubbles travel through the veins, they lodge in the joints, causing agonizing pain known as the bends.
The bends, right.
They can block blood flow to the spinal cord, causing paralysis, or they can even reach the brain, causing an arterial gas embolism.
Which is lethal.
Frequently lethal, yes.
So the only way to prevent your blood from boiling into bubbles is to ascend agonizingly slowly.
Exactly. You have to pause at specific depths for calculated periods of time. You might spend 10 minutes at 30 feet, then 20 minutes at 15 feet.
Just waiting.
Literally just floating in the empty blue water, waiting for your circulatory system to carry the dissolved gas from your tissues to your lungs so you can slowly, safely exhale it into the water.
Let's paint a picture of how frustrating that is for a scientist.
It's maddening.
Imagine you are a marine biologist looking for a highly rare octopus behavior. You gear up on a surface boat, you jump in, and you descend to a reef. You finally spot the octopus.
A breakthrough moment.
Right. But you only have, say, 30 minutes of bottom time before your body has absorbed so much compressed nitrogen that your time debt for the commute back up becomes completely unmanageable.
You're out of time.
Exactly. If you stay to watch the octopus for another hour, your required decompression time on the way up might stretch into multiple hours.
Which you don't have enough air for.
Right. You simply don't have enough air in your tank to survive hanging onto a rope in the water for 3 hours waiting to off-gas. So you have to abandon this incredibly rare scientific observation just to start the slow, miserable commute back to the surface.
That ruins the research.
The commute back up literally dictates and destroys the actual job. Is this the primary reason we know so little about the ocean? Because the commute takes longer than the job.
It's a huge part of it. The sheer inefficiency of surface-based marine biology is just staggering. A researcher spends 80% of their energy, their air, and their cognitive load just managing their transit and mitigating their physiological risk,
Wow.
and only 20% of their time actually gathering data.
That's a terrible ratio.
It is.
Hmm.
But here's the genius of Vanguard and the saturation principle. It exploits a loophole in human physiology.
What loophole?
Once your body is fully saturated, which again takes about 24 hours inside Vanguard, your decompression debt maxes out. It hits an absolute ceiling.
Because your body literally cannot absorb any more gas.
Right. Whether you stay saturated in Vanguard for 5 days, 5 weeks, or 5 months, your required decompression time at the very end of the mission remains exactly the same.
Oh, wow.
You don't accrue any more time debt. By living down in the habitat, you pay that toll exactly once at the very end of the expedition.
In exchange for all that time at the bottom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In exchange, you unlock hundreds of hours of penalty-free diving outside the moon pool every single day.
You completely eliminate the daily commute.
Yes.
And by solving that interstellar time debt problem, Vanguard triggers a massive leap forward for actual real-time science.
It changes everything.
Let's transition from the logistics of diving to what the scientists are actually accomplishing down there. Because the transcript highlights that Vanguard acts as an undersea laboratory setting.
A dry lab at depth.
Right, where scientists can take samples and process them in nearly real time at depth.
We connect this to the bigger picture. The ability to process samples at ambient pressure solves one of the most heartbreaking fundamental flaws in marine biology: sample degradation.
Yeah.
The CNET transcript notes that normally, when you take a deep-sea sample back to the surface, you are physically decompressing that sample. Processing it down inside Vanguard gives scientists a pristine look at what is happening in a much shorter time frame, with far less chance of the organism degrading before it can be studied.
Now, the transcript glosses over the mechanics of this degradation, but it is vital to understand.
Extremely vital.
I want to challenge you to explain this. If I'm a scientist and I scoop up a weird deep-sea sponge or a rare microorganism from the reef at 56 feet, what actually happens to it on the microscopic level as I swim it up to the surface boat? Does it, melt? Does it explode?
On a cellular level, dragging a deep-sea organism to the surface inflicts catastrophic tearing trauma.
Seriously?
Yes, you have to remember that marine life at that depth has spent millions of years evolving to exist perfectly at that specific ambient pressure.
Right, they're built for it.
Their cell walls, their internal cellular fluids, the dissolved gases inside their own tissues are all structurally balanced for 3 atmospheres of pressure.
Okay, I see.
When a scientist puts that sponge in a collection bag and hauls it up 56 feet, the ambient pressure surrounding the sponge plummets rapidly.
And just like the soda can, the gases inside the sponge expand.
Intensely. The gases trapped inside the sponge's tissues expand outward. Delicate cell membranes stretch beyond their elastic limits and rupture.
Oh, that's brutal.
And more devastatingly, complex proteins inside the organism begin to denature.
Denature, meaning what?
A protein's physical, 3-dimensional folded shape is often stabilized by the ambient water pressure it evolved in. When you remove that pressure, the protein physically unwinds and falls apart.
It just loses its shape entirely.
Exactly, and it loses its biological function. By the time that sponge reaches the bright, hot, low-pressure deck of a surface boat, you are no longer studying a deep-sea sponge.
What are you studying then?
You are studying the decompressed, ruptured, dying remains of a deep-sea sponge. Its biological behavior has fundamentally altered.
Think about the scientific tragedy of that.
It is massive.
Think about how much data has likely been lost or completely misinterpreted over the last century simply because we had to drag these delicate organisms up to our harsh surface atmosphere just to look at them under a microscope.
We've been looking at broken samples this whole time.
But with Vanguard, that entire trauma is bypassed. You scoop up that sponge from the reef, you swim it 10 feet over to the moon pool, you stand up inside Vanguard, and you walk it over to the wet lab counter in the bathroom.
Right.
The ambient pressure inside the room is exactly the same as the water outside. The sponge doesn't even know it left the ocean floor.
The scientific yield from that is immeasurable. You are witnessing biology behaving exactly as it does in nature, without the artifact of decompression trauma clouding your data.
That is incredible.
You can sequence DNA, observe cellular division, and analyze symbiotic relationships in real time under the exact physical parameters that life evolved in.
Which changes the game for so many fields.
It allows for a level of precision in environmental monitoring, pharmaceutical discovery, and climate science that we desperately need.
But the value of Vanguard goes far beyond just studying the ocean. The source reveals a completely surprising secondary purpose for this entire endeavor.
Right, the space connection.
The CNET video points out that habitats like this may prove incredibly useful in helping astronauts train for space missions.
It's the ultimate training ground.
The transcript specifically calls out the crew of Artemis NASA's program to return to the moon, drawing a direct parallel to the incredibly tiny space they have to operate in. It states Vanguard is a fantastic training scenario for folks like spaceflight crews or people living in small, confined environments.
The psychological and operational parallels between aquanauts and astronauts are deep and they're multifaceted.
How so? Because obviously one is underwater and one is in a vacuum.
Well, space agencies like NASA have incredibly sophisticated facilities for training astronauts, right?
Yeah.
They can simulate zero gravity in short bursts using parabolic airplane flights.
The vomit comet.
Exactly. And they can simulate lunar surface tasks in massive hangars. But it is nearly impossible to simulate the crushing psychological reality of lethal isolation on the surface of the Earth.
Lethal isolation, that's a great term.
Because when you are in a surface simulator, no matter how realistic the control panels are, deep in your lizard brain, you know that if things go completely wrong, someone can just pop the heavy door open and you can walk out to the parking lot.
Right. You're never in true danger.
Exactly. But when you are inside Vanguard, just like when you were strapped inside an Orion spacecraft on a trajectory to the moon, you are acutely, constantly aware that the environment just inches on the other side of that hull is entirely incompatible with human life.
One mistake and it's over.
If you open a window on the International Space Station, you die. If you open a pressure hatch incorrectly on Vanguard, the pressure differential violently equalizes, the habitat floods, and you drown.
Wow.
That background radiation of persistent lethal danger forces a crew to operate with a level of hyper-discipline, rigorous procedural adherence, and emotional regulation that you simply cannot fake in a safe environment.
You combine that lethal boundary with the severe confinement we unpacked earlier, the friction of the bathroom/office dynamic, and you have the ultimate stress test for a crew preparing for deep space.
Absolutely.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, if you cannot figure out a schedule to respectfully use a bathroom that is also your wet lab at 56 feet underwater while sharing bunk beds for a week, you absolutely should not be doing it in a tin can floating 250,000 miles away from Earth.
The interpersonal friction would jeopardize a multi-billion-dollar mission.
Exactly. But as isolated as the aquanauts are down there in the dark, the transcript makes it very clear they are not truly independent.
No, they are highly dependent.
Vanguard requires a massive external support structure to keep them alive. The source mentions a topside support team that routinely takes dirty water out of the facility to dispose of it properly.
Right, surface support.
And even more critically, it mentions a topside boat that houses a massive recompression chamber to handle emergency scenarios.
That heavy reliance on the topside team is another direct parallel to spaceflight. The aquanauts are the astronauts on the ISS, and the topside team is mission control in Houston.
So they are constantly in communication.
Vanguard is not a self-sustaining, closed-loop ecosystem. The aquanauts rely on the surface crew for logistical support, waste management, delivering fresh carbon dioxide scrubber chemicals, and acting as their ultimate and honestly only safety net.
Let's really analyze that safety net, because to me this sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare. Walk me through the mechanics of a worst-case scenario here. What happens if the topside boat actually has to use that emergency recompression chamber?
This is where the inescapable physics of saturation become a matter of immediate life and death. Let's say there is a catastrophic medical emergency down in Vanguard. An aquanaut suffers a massive heart attack. Or perhaps the habitat suffers a critical, unfixable life support failure.
So they need to get out now.
Right. But you cannot simply pull that aquanaut to the surface, throw them in a speedboat, and medevac them to a hospital.
Because of the saturation.
Because their blood is entirely saturated with pressurized gas. A rapid ascent to the surface would cause their blood to physically boil with nitrogen bubbles. It would be a fatal case of decompression sickness instantly.
So they are trapped. You need a hospital, but you can't bring them up to atmospheric pressure.
So you have to bring the pressure up to them.
How does that work?
In an emergency, the topside team deploys a pressurized rescue bell.
Like a mini-sub.
It's essentially a heavy, sealed metal elevator that is lowered down through the water column by a crane on the surface ship. The bell is pressurized to precisely 56 feet to match Vanguard. The aquanauts swim out of the moon pool, enter the bell, and lock the bottom hatch. Now, the crane operators on the surface, dealing with ocean swells and wind, have to winch this heavy bell containing the crew back up to the ship.
Wow. Okay, so they're on the boat now.
The aquanauts inside are technically above the surface of the ocean now, swinging in the air. But physiologically, the air pressure inside the bell tells their bodies they are still 56 feet deep.
Because the pressure hasn't changed.
Exactly. The surface crew then has to precisely mate the bottom of that rescue bell to the airlock of a massive metal recompression chamber bolted to the deck of the ship.
Oh, man.
Once the seals are tight and the pressure is equalized between the two chambers, the aquanauts transfer into the ship's chamber.
And from there, medical staff can enter the chamber through secondary airlocks to treat the heart attack, all while the technicians slowly, over the course of several days, bleed the pressure out of the chamber to safely decompress the crew back to surface pressure.
Yes. The margin for error is essentially zero. A failed seal on that bell means explosive decompression. The logistics are mind-boggling.
It is terrifying. And that brings us to the final major takeaway from our deep dive today. We've spent this entire time unpacking what Vanguard is, the mind-bending physics of how it works, and the science it accomplishes today.
Right.
But the CNET transcript makes it abundantly clear that Vanguard is merely a prototype. It is a proof of concept.
Vanguard is described specifically in the source as a stepping stone to Deep's much more ambitious long-term vision. The next phase they are building toward is a significantly larger, more advanced habitat called Sentinel.
Sentinel. And Sentinel is described as having some very notable structural differences from Vanguard.
Very notable.
First, it features a modular design. And second, which I'm sure future crews will celebrate, it will have individual sleeping quarters. They are finally solving the bunk bed and bathroom office crisis.
A huge upgrade.
The transcript says the ultimate goal here is to build the ocean equivalent of the International Space Station. A massive, modular space for studying and living in places otherwise entirely unfit for long-term human survival. Deep envisions having multiple habitats deployed globally to maintain a sustained sub-presence 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The jump from Vanguard to Sentinel is astronomical in scope.
It seems like a massive leap.
It is. Vanguard is a tiny, 4-person, 5-day test tube designed to prove the life support tech works. Sentinel represents a permanent global underwater civilization.
And the modular part.
When the source mentions modular design, they're talking about a plug-and-play architecture. Think of how the International Space Station was built piece by piece over decades.
Oh, so it's not all built at once.
Right. Sentinel won't be a single tube lowered into the ocean. It could start as a core living module. A year later, they lower a dedicated wet lab module and bolt it seamlessly to the core.
That's amazing.
The year after that, they add a hydroponic garden module for fresh food or an engineering bay for ROV repair. Because the ambient pressure is equalized throughout, you can theoretically keep expanding the footprint of the habitat on the ocean floor indefinitely.
So what does this all mean? We look up at the night sky, and if you catch it at the right time, you can see the ISS streaking across the stars, and you know there are humans aboard living in space.
Right.
This vision from deep means we will have an ISS hidden in the absolute dark right below the crashing waves. But I keep coming back to the logistics here.
It's the hardest part.
Maintaining multiple Sentinel habitats worldwide for a sustained 247 presence. We just talked about how intensive the topside support and emergency response is for just one tiny habitat off Florida. Can you imagine the logistical mountain of maintaining a permanent presence across multiple global sites?
It requires the creation of an entirely new branch of maritime logistics dedicated solely to supporting submerged human outposts.
You'd need a whole fleet.
You would need a fleet of highly specialized surface vessels permanently stationed dynamically above each habitat. You need constant, uninterrupted supply chains delivering fresh carbon dioxide scrubbing chemicals, specialized breathing gas mixtures, fresh food, and rotating crews.
Not to mention the weather.
Exactly. You need redundant power generation systems capable of surviving Category 5 hurricanes on the surface while maintaining life support below.
Is it really worth it?
Well, if the scientific yield is as high as the Vanguard prototype promises, real-time degradation-free marine biology, the discovery of novel pharmaceutical compounds from deep-sea organisms, unmatched precision and long-term climate monitoring, then the economic and scientific incentive to build those massive supply chains will absolutely materialize.
For now, the video notes that Vanguard is entirely focused on doing more initial, rigorous tests in its new location before they even start inviting outside researchers and scientists to come aboard.
Which is smart.
Right. They have to prove the baseline concept works safely and consistently before they start handing out the keys to the underwater lab.
which is the only prudent approach when dealing with an environment that offers zero forgiveness for engineering arrogance.
You can't rush it.
You test the structural hardware, you refine the saturation protocols, and you drill the topside emergency bell response over and over again until the procedures become profoundly boring.
And then?
Only when the survival aspect becomes mundane do you bring in the biologists to do the science.
Wow. This has been an incredible journey today.
It really has.
We started today looking at a 40-year drought in American open ocean habitats where we just completely abandoned the seafloor, and we've unpacked how Vanguard is boldly breaking that drought.
A huge moment for science.
We've looked at the intense physical reality of living inside a reverse aquarium at 56 feet, the mind-bending physics of becoming a gas-saturated aquanaut, and how achieving that state completely solves the interstellar time debt problem that plagues traditional diving. We've seen how establishing a dry lab at ambient pressure on the ocean floor prevents delicate marine samples from violently degrading on the way up, offering this pure, untainted look at the ecosystem.
All while acting as a space simulator.
Right. Offering the ultimate lethal psychological stress test for astronauts preparing to head to the moon. And finally, we've looked at the grand vision for the future. Sentinel, a modular, expanding global network acting as the ISS of the sea.
The future is bright.
The biggest takeaway for you listening is understanding that the next great frontier of human habitation, the next massive leap for science, isn't just looking up at the stars, it is looking straight down into the crushing abyss.
This raises an important question, though, one that stretches far beyond just the materials engineering and the marine biology.
What's that?
If Deep successfully executes this vision building, a global network of permanent sentinel habitats, and maintaining a 247 human presence, we will eventually produce an entire generation of researchers, technicians, and explorers who spend more of their active waking lives under 3 atmospheres of pressure than they do on the surface.
That's a wild thought.
If you spend months at a time as a saturated human waking up to the blue filtered light of the reef, physically adapting to the dense air, intimately connected to the quiet rhythms of the ocean floor, how will that fundamentally rewire human psychology?
Oh, where?
Will we eventually reach a point where these aquanauts return home and view the bright, loud, low-pressure surface of the Earth not as home, but as the unnatural, hostile environment?
That is a haunting and deeply beautiful thought to leave on. The ocean floor becoming home, and the surface merely becoming the noisy place you have to visit to get supplies. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep looking for the surprising connections in the complex world around you, and the next time you stand on a beach and look out at the seemingly empty ocean, just remember, someone might be down there, suspended in the blue, looking right back up at you.